Hello, Penger. Welcome to Edmonton. I'm going to welcome myself to Edmonton. I'm here. I woke up on about an hours and a half sleep this morning after game 2 last night. Got on my 5:30 a.m. flight through Atlanta. No issues travel-wise, and we're here. I've never been to Edmonton. It's the only spot in the league that I have yet to get to. So I'm super excited for the game, see the atmosphere, but here we are in Edmonton. So good to see you, buddy.
So you, KT, yeah, great to see you too, and great work as always on NHL Network. I got to tell you, I had a bunch of buddies over here at the lake, and the pregame show got you guys on, and then the minute the puck's going to drop, we fired on over to ESPN and watch our buddy Ray Ferraro over there. But you know what? You guys are doing magnificent work, and I know what you're talking about with those late nights and the early mornings. I'm usually late nights, even if I'm not working that long, and then try to catch an early flight.
That's
but
right.
you were able to catch a flight from, okay, hang on a second. You went to Atlanta and Atlanta direct to Edmonton?
Yep. Yeah. Atlanta. It was a quick little hour layover. And then there was a league charter. I opted for, I'm a big Delta girl. I figured this is an opportunity to gain some Delta miles for my college football season, keep that status. So yeah, I flew Delta. It was great. Very easy. Landed Edmonton, nobody at the airport. It was a seamless travel day, which is great. And the charter's coming in any minute now. So my colleagues will all be here. We'll grab hopefully they want to go to early dinner because I'm ready to night. It's been a long day. But let's talk about this game too. Holy cow. What
I think more holy jumping is in order.
Well, that's your term. I'm not going there. That's you. What impressed you the most about Florida? Because that was an unbelievable game last night.
Yeah, a lot of things did. I think number one is when they gave up the first goal. I still just watching the game, and I'm like, I never saw them in any trouble. I just don't see them as a team that panics.
We texted with each other, and we were saying, I don't think this is the end of Florida.
No, and a couple of days ago when we recapped it, I said, Florida could come back and play an incredible game from start to finish and get robbed by Stuart Skinner, the same way that I thought Edmonton played a great game one. What did they do wrong in game one? They did nothing wrong except lift the puck over the shoulder of the goaltender that Bobrovsky made so many of those great saves. So it is a funny game, but even down 1-0, it was great energy for the Edmonton Oilers. And anytime Ekholm scores, I love that guy's celebration and the way he is. And it was a goal that he shot it. I had to rewind it a couple of times. I'm like, how did that get through Bobrovsky?
Yeah.
Like those pucks don't go through this guy,
Yeah.
And yet it did. So I thought, well, maybe they got a little clink in the armor right here. But then I'm watching Florida, and I'm watching them dial it up, and then I'm watching them defend, and then I'm watching them keep Conor on the outside, and I'm thinking, man, they're not in any trouble whatsoever. And as it turns out, they weren't in any trouble whatsoever.
Yeah, and you kind of got that sense, and then of course the tying goal in the second period right off the bat, halfway through, it was like, here they come, right? And you could start to see them impose their will. Did you feel like Florida sort of sucked Edmonton into their game rather than Edmonton playing their own game? It was almost like Florida enticed them and baited them into a style that they didn't want to do.
Yeah, and it's funny because Edmonton has shown more versatility in their game than what they have in the past, quite frankly, to get to the Stanley Cup final. So, it's not like they don't have that game, but Florida has it in a different way. Just different characters, even guys like Anton Lundell and Lois Terranen. Even Vladdy, who's a goal scorer, finishing a check as the first man in, maybe blocking a shot. So I think there's different elements to Florida's game that has more depth to it, maybe than what Edmonton has in that kind of greasy game that we're talking about. But again, in game one, what Sam Bennett made that one-handed pass behind the net, somehow it ends up in front of the net, and it ends up Carter Verhaeghe, I think it was the one that scores, and Darnell Nurse is kind of looking, and the puck goes right by him. Game two, Evan Bouchard has a chance to maybe pinch somebody off on the boards, loses that part of it, loses the front goal against, has the puck in the slot, puts it right on the tape to the Florida Panthers, goal against. So it seems like every time there's a mistake by the Edmonton Oilers, especially on the defensive side, it's ended up in the net. And one other thing, that Evan Rodrigues is really, it's impressive. I know he's always been a goal scorer going back to his college days. He's just found his way right now, and it's nice to see a guy like that have success in such a big moment.
It truly is.
Yeah, it is. It is, because this is as big as it gets right now, and he bangs home a couple of goals, and he's been a good player.
I think it's really fun to watch players like Evan Rodrigues, like Lindell, who we're going to talk about, but also like Sam Bennett. I think Sam Bennett is having an unbelievable series. I mean, he is just all over the place. But I do want to address the Alexander Barkov, the hit that he took, the high elbow to the face, about 9 minutes and change to go in the third period. He did not return to the game at all. Big storyline coming out of that game too, whether or not he's going to be available, what perhaps repercussions could be coming for Leon Dreisaitl. I don't think any, but moving forward, you've got the 2 days off in between games, which is certainly beneficial if Barkov is, dealing with some issues from that hit. But if he is not able to go, Panger, in game 3 here in Edmonton, who makes up for the loss? How do you counter this if you're the Florida Panthers? Because that's he's their top player right now.
Yeah, well, number one, let's go back to the time on the clock. When you get brought back into the quiet room and you get diagnosed by the doctors if that went into overtime, he was to me, I think he was returning. But
because they scored 2 minutes after he went in. They scored 2 minutes after, so that helped. Yeah.
And then they get a 2-goal lead. And then obviously, to end the game. But this is just me. I feel very confident that Sasha Barkov is going to return for game 3. That's just me. I mean, that's a big, strong jaw that he's got, the willingness to come back, but it's also the doctor's appointment as well. I mean, he left the game because there's protocol, and some of it is mandatory, and some of it is the trainer can take a look on the bench and diagnose it. And if he doesn't feel like there's, that player doesn't have his wits about him, then he's got to go back. Then he's got to go through the process. So there was just no time on the clock for him to come back. And as far as I've ever seen in that kind of protocol. Now, when you want to call it that, if they call it that, now you've got to go to the rink the next morning. Then you got to get on a bike. Then you got to see how you feel. And just me, you can be sure that Sasha Barkov is not going to tell anybody that he's not feeling good. That's just me. So, right. But let's just say that he can't come back. That's where I mean, Lundell has done just a great job. I know he's not a mini version of Barkov, because that's not even fair, but he is a well-rounded hockey player. And I think in a short period of time, a player like that can come in and the team can still have success. You always miss your great players in a longer stretch of time. But I think for 1 or 2 games, especially if it's just one game, then I think Lundell could go in there. They've got enough depth that they can fill up the bottom part of the roster. They can move him up. And then it's about finding the right guy to play with Tarasenko and with Louis Terranen, because they've been really good with Lundell there. So to me, that's the main point. That, because you're going to go into their building, into Edmonton. They have last change, you don't. So basically, your matchup is your D. So you change your D on the fly. You change your D on the fly. Sometimes you might get Sasha Barkov on there for 20 seconds of a Connor McDavid shift, and sometimes you may not get him on there at all. So I don't think that's going to be the biggest deal anyways, that part of the matchup. So I think they would be okay for one game with Lundell taking a spot, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, but to your point, Barkov, 2 wins away from hoisting the Stanley Cup. You can bet he's going to give every effort to get out there on the ice on Thursday night in game 3. So now the series is here in Edmonton, Panger. Obviously, Edmonton is in a giant hole. I mean, we were in the parking lot as the buses were coming out, the players were coming out. I saw Corey Perry. I saw Mark Stewart, who runs the penalty kill for Edmonton, chatted with them briefly. And I mean, it's that feeling, you don't even want to say hi to the players, but when they say hi to you, you say hello, but it's touch and go. They were obviously very defeated, very disappointed, but they get an opportunity here to come back. How realistic is it for them to get back into this series, especially now? You mentioned the final change being on home ice and all the things that come with playing on your home ice. Talk to me about these next 2 games and the importance of them.
Well, those are main factors, and that is keeping in mind Dreisaitl, with no suspension, or let's just anticipate that there is none. So let's just anticipate that he is playing. Well, that Chris Knobloch and his staff, you got no choice now. You're down to it right now. You're putting them on the same line. Every ozone face-off, every time there's any kind of icing play by the Florida Panthers, which they don't ice it very often. You know what, KT? Keep in mind how many times they flip pucks out of their zone. Yeah. They're one of the best I've seen in a long time. Maybe going back to the 97-98 Larry Murphy-led Detroit Red Wings. I mean, They just flip it out. And that's a skill, because some teams don't know how to do it and they ice the puck. But some teams do, and it just ends up in the neutral zone and for a fair catch. So they're good at that. But if it comes down to it, you know that any type of ozone face-off, it's got to be doubled down. And I think it's going to be important for Chris Knobloch and his staff to find the right combinations. And maybe it's a little bit more, you never know, it might be a little bit more Evander Kane. It might be a little bit more Corey Perry, who could be beneficial, who could be a real good player. He did that before in the previous series after sitting, down 5 games? And then he jumped right in there and played with Dreisaitl on that second line. So I think they've got a lot of things that they can utilize as well on home ice to give them an advantage. And I would never, ever say that they're done. Not a chance.
Yeah.
They win one game. Here we go.
Yeah.
They didn't lose home ice advantage. Florida's got home ice advantage. Basically Edmonton nearly won home ice advantage by their great performance in game 1. So they got to, this time of year, man, you got to keep the positives in check. And that's what I like about those guys even coming out and talking to you, because that's just even keeledness. That's like, we're not changing our day because we lost a game here. We're going to just keep our heads up high, and we're going to go back to Edmonton. We got last change. We got the energy of the crowd. And now it's very, very, very important for Stuart Skinner not to give up one of those weak, sappy goals against, because that can really, they don't need any deflators right now. They need their goaltender to make the kind of saves you have to make, and sprinkle in 1 or 2 superlatives to get that crowd going, and to make sure everybody knows that they've got his back and what have you. If you give up one early and it's a squeaker, KT, that feeling. It's like, oh boy, here we go. And that's starts right there in the net, and then it goes forward from that point on.
I want to touch on Connor McDavid real quickly, because he only has a point in the series. He's acknowledged that he felt nervous during game 1, or coming into the rink for game 1. Probably, we know he has a ton of pressure on him, but probably some of those nerves went away for game 2, having the experience of game 1 under his belt. But now he's coming back. And as great as it is to play in front of your home fans, he is the superstar of the National Hockey League. He's here in Canada trying to win the first cup in a long time for this country, but also for the city of Edmonton. Is there more pressure on him coming back here? And what do you expect him to do on home ice? Because we've seen him flying around in the series, but just the production and the numbers aren't quite there right now.
Yeah, he has flown around, and he has done some marvelous things with the puck, and entering the zone's not easy against a team that plays that 1-1-3, but he's been able to do that. Now what I would suggest is go right through the guts of the ice a little bit more. There's been a lot of spin-offs, a lot of turn-offs, a lot of chances that maybe they're not the greatest chances to score a goal, but if you wait and hesitate and double clutch as you enter the offensive zone against Florida, the minute you do that, they're creeping up on you. They're getting closer, and then you take another step, and now they're going to lift your stick. They're going to bump you. You're going to be, you've taken an opportunity, KT, and it's been squashed. So that would be my recommendation. Play everything a little bit of a higher speed. Anticipate you're going to get checked. Don't think that you've got the next play always. Go right to the middle of the ice and put more pressure on the D. That'd be for me. I thought there was a couple of times last night. I thought Zach Hyman could have shot the puck. Dreisaitl could have shot. Connor, shoot the puck. I'm not talking from 900 feet or from the sideboards, on the goal line. I'm just talking about chances that are within the home plate area. You can't not shoot the puck against a good defending team like Florida. Just back them off, make them turn around, see what kind of rebound you're going to get. And that causes a little bit of chaos and a little bit of havoc. So those would just be my recommendations, because Edmonton hasn't played poorly. You cannot suggest that. They played great in game 1, and they were okay in game 2.
Yep. And that was kind of the sentiment I heard afterwards. Just, we've dug ourselves a hole, but they're not out of this, as you said. And I expect Corey Perry to be back in the lineup. He was mad. He was not in there. Rupper saw him before the game. We saw him afterwards. He had a lengthy conversation outside the bus with Ken Holland that we saw. So I would imagine that conversation was, on both ways, very stern. And also, I think Corey Perry's a difference maker. This is a guy that's experienced. He's a veteran, and
he's greasy.
He's greasy, and going back into the lineup after being taken out, he's going to be fired up for that game. So hopefully we see him in game 3, because I do think he can be a difference maker.
Yeah, and that one too. And I want to go back to the other point when you talked about Connor McDavid and how, the nerves, and I'm sure he had a dry mouth all day and anxiety for game 1. Man, it's easy to talk about these superstar players. This is where they belong. They have to win a championship. You know how hard it is? I remember this. We're going back a long ways, and you could probably ask Gretz if he happens to be in Edmonton. But that those years of the Edmonton Oilers not winning, and then they ran into the New York Islanders. which are a team similar to the Florida Panthers. I mean, a
Yeah.
hard defending team with a great two-way centerman in Brian Trottier. In fact, Brett said that, the last time he saw a player like that strong and that good in the defense zone, he brings up Brian Trottier. Only Gretz can bring up Trottier to bring that from the past, which I think is fantastic. I love the way Wayne does that to remember players that were great players. And Brian Trottier and that team, they epitomized what defending and hard play was all about. And Wayne didn't get much done his first year trying to win. You can go back to a lot of great players their first time around.
Crosby,
it didn't happen.
Yeah, we had a great graphic of your point that just like that. Amazing, yeah.
It didn't happen. Like
neutralized in those first games.
Yep, and and it's like, okay, all the pressure on the offensive guys. You know what I'd like to be in the playoffs? I'd like to be a defensive stalwart because I think it's easier. I mean, I do. Everybody's trying harder to back check. Everybody's doing the little things. And the offensive player, the guy that's supposed to make the play, there's no room. It's waist deep in a big muddy. So, like when you can excel, Gretz averaged 40 points a playoff. I think it's something stupid like that.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. But it doesn't happen all the time. It doesn't happen right away. So when that's not happening, I'm sure he's getting a lot of advice as to what he can do, what he should do, what other things. The bottom line is Connor McDavid's a great player on his own. He just has to do what he does and somehow find a way to get a greasy goal or to set up a goal or to block a shot. Or those are the things that create the I don't know, these players in these big moments. It's not just the offensive side of it.
Right. All right. Well, I'm excited. I get my first opportunity to go see a game here in Edmonton. Game 3.
You're gonna love it.
Final. It's going to be awesome. The atmosphere I heard outside and inside is just, second to none. These fans are going to be ready. They're hungry for it. So
you're going to go to first of all, it's been around for a lot of years, and a lot of great broadcasters have had many great nights. Dave Strader and I sang on this little very small stage, which I didn't sing. Straight sang because he's more talented, way more talented. I can't sing. But from John Davidson to the John Shannons, the Hockey Nights, everybody. You're just going to have to peek into Sherlock Holmes one of your 5 nights and make sure you go in there.
I will.
And just grab. Okay. All right. And then look around and just smell the history of this little place. It's legendary.
I love that. Speaking of history, before we go, we had Ron MacLean on our show yesterday before game 2. And, he is just an encyclopedia of knowledge. He's one of, if not the best to ever do it. Hosting Hockey Night in Canada. This is his 40th 4-0 Stanley Cup final. And I just have to give a shout out to him because he's so wonderful. He was kind enough to join us. He had such great storytelling and just his knowledge of the game and his insightfulness. It was really great to see him, to be a part, just have him on the set. And I just think, you talk about those voices in the game. Put him right up there. So really cool. 40th. It's unreal.
Legendary, iconic. And keep in mind that these great Canadian broadcasters don't always get a chance to have Canadian teams with them.
Yes,
so
that's right. This is a big moment for them.
Yeah, one of the last ones I think we did on ESPN and ABC before they lost the rights was the Calgary and Tampa Bay 7-game series. Yeah. And I remember that city of Calgary was just nuts. The people, it's a different level of anticipation. So the other shout out to Jim Nill, GM of the year.
Yes.
Doesn't get a lot of credit. Not a lot of people. Yeah, not a lot of people know Jim. A phenomenal person, and just does his work and doesn't look for any limelight at all. But congratulations, Jim. I know it's a great award and well deserved.
It is indeed, and he's got those Dallas Stars cranking. They'll be back in the picture. They'll be back in the conversation next year as well. So, congrats to Jim Nill. Well, I'll let you know how Game 3 is, Panger. We can talk all about my experience the next time we join you. It'll be exciting. Enjoy the game, and we'll reconnect afterwards.
I'll be watching right here from Grandpa's garage. Okay.
Grandpa's garage. There. I love it. Bye, Tanger. Good to see you.
Okay. Great effort, KT. Way to go.